All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 16th public workshop. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. My name is Mike Ryan. I am the chair of the Executive Committee and the Governing Board for the Solid Waste Authority of Broward County. I'm here tonight to offer some opening comments, and then we will have a presentation from the consultants. We'll then open it up for public comment, which can include questions and how you're feeling, and we will go until everyone has had an opportunity to be heard. Let me begin by saying that the Executive Committee of the Solid Waste Authority has collectively dedicated hundreds of hours to meeting, to preparation, to reading materials, digesting reports, and analysis over the last 18 months. Today, we will present to you a living and breathing document, a draft master plan to start the process of addressing our trash situation. Where do we start our discussion today? Let me offer this. We face a crisis. Not just of what we do with 5 million tons of waste that we generate here in Broward County each and every year, or that we have failed to divert and recycle in any meaningful way, or that we rely far too heavily on landfilling, which increases damage, environmental damage, and diverts us from our primary purpose of diversion so that we can reduce, reuse, and recycle. No, we face a crisis in a different way, a threatening economic crisis, where we as cities and the county have ceded our economic strength to the market, to monopolistic market forces, and the vagaries of market shifts. We lost opportunities to control our destiny through ownership of the trash infrastructure here in Broward County, and thereby lost our ability to control our own destiny across the county, currently, and in the future. Some of these crisis points were generated based on decisions 50 years ago. Some were the product of a breakdown in opportunities that were available more recently. And all along, the market forces have eclipsed our power. We now are at a crossroad that is even more daunting than what we faced 50 years ago, with far less tools, more uncertainty, more risk, and more potential to fail again. That will be the choices for the policymakers in our community, for you and me to make. In summary, we must change behavior to create volume reduction so as to divert from landfilling and WTE or waste-to-energy plants in every way possible. And we must galvanize together the commitment to our own economic strength in numbers and vision and tonnage of garbage, which are commodities. If we do not exercise our flow control management through our collective strength as cities, we will cede our future to market forces who are watching our evolving crisis, and we will have few options to pivot. It could have been different. Just looking to the north by 15 miles, and we see a different future. Today we'll discuss the draft master plan, which is the product of the accumulated analysis, all of which has been publicly available and distributed. It comprises 11 task-specific white papers comprising thousands of pages of information and data and analysis. Nearly 18 months of work by the Executive Committee, including multi-hour meetings every month, public meetings bringing the public together, public meetings bringing industry together, and meetings with our community leaders. Along the way, every city and all our staffs have had the opportunity to review this data and this material. And before we go through the draft master plan, let me offer some points on how we got here and our challenges. Let me give you a little history. Around 1975, Palm Beach County and Broward were in the same position in relation to thinking about what do we do with our trash. They went different directions. And as a result, we are in a very different position here in Broward County today. The Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County is a dependent special district in Palm Beach County, which they asked the Florida legislature to form in 1975. They get most of their budget through non-ad valorem taxes. And in 2017, when the cities had broken apart here in Broward County, when we had all gone our separate ways, let me outline what Palm Beach County had then. 7 home, chemical, and recycling centers that disposed of 4.2 million pounds of home chemicals. They owned 6 transfer stations that handled 75% of the countywide garbage. They owned 2 waste-to-energy facilities that combusted 1.8 million tons of garbage each year. They had a processing facility that could process recycling of 100,000 tons each year. They had a biosolids processing facility that turned excrement or waste into energy. And they had a landfill, which was their last resort. As a result, in 2023, Palm Beach County reported an 80% recycling rate. Our rate was below 40%. The Palm Beach County Solid Waste Authority maintained 300 public recycling drop-offs, had 385 employees, and operated 65 tractor trailers to take the garbage from the transfer stations that were strategically located around the county to processing facilities. Reportedly, even for this mature system, Palm Beach County spends $4 million a year in education to reinforce the principles. Broward County, in contrast, owns nothing. Instead, we chose not to form a dependent special district. Broward County chose to implement a contractual agreement between the cities and the county that would be set to expire in 2013. We created what was called the Resource Recovery Board. And instead of owning 2 waste-to-energy facilities that we paid for, that the residents and the businesses paid for, all of the brick and mortar, when those bonds were paid off, rather than owning those, we handed the keys off to private industry. We owned almost no assets. We don't own transfer stations, we don't own the trucks to transport, and we don't own any of the facilities that can recycle. As the agreement was coming to expiration prior to 2013, there were members that were involved that were interested, who understood we were facing a threat, and they tried to work together, but we had no leverage. The pricing offered by the market for WTE and landfilling and recycling forced cities to consider alternatives. We were fractured. We went in different directions, each fighting and chasing a better price for their individual cities. And the one place that we had a waste-to-energy plant was closed and dismantled, leaving us only one facility left in the hands of a private ownership group. In short, in 2013, when we became fragmented, we had little to show for the past 50 years, and every metric involving garbage and recycling and diversion was going in the wrong direction. Today, in Broward, these 5 million tons of garbage have to be disposed. And we cannot burn our way out of this, and we cannot landfill our way out of this. And just because we're facing this problem today, I'm not hand-wringing about the decisions that were made in the past, because we didn't do anything about it. But it is instructive of the crisis we face now and how we have to work together. This is our last best chance. Our mission at this point must be to divert as much from landfilling and WTE as is possible, and to galvanize ourselves together in our collective economic strength that is exerted by the collective tonnage we have to drive the best pricing possible. When we exercise that strength, with an eye towards possibly even building our own infrastructure in the future, we take away the power of market forces, and we give our next generation the best opportunity to be able to define its own future. I want to say that this draft master plan and this effort and the work that we have been doing together represents a historic shift. For the first time, we are looking at garbage through a zero-waste lens, as a galvanizing aspiration, as a lighthouse to chase. It may not be achievable, They may not be achievable in my lifetime, but it is a guiding principle. We must focus on changing behavior, from how we handle the supply chain, to what we buy on the shelves, to how we take our food and our goods home, what we do in our homes and our businesses with organics. We have to recycle, reuse, and reduce. If we are to divert from landfilling and waste to energy, we must take action. And I would say, and I think everything that we've learned in the past 18 months, is composting is not a fringe concept. It is available, and I thank the county for working together with the executive committee to begin working on that plan. As part of this process, we must take action and do what we can now. We can't wait for the draft master plan to be approved by everybody, because there are things we can do now. For one, we need to initiate and have sustained education, not about what we may do in the future, but what has to be done now. It must be cross-cultural, it must be across all ages and all socioeconomic demographics. It must touch industry, commercial, and residential alike. We must start by single-use plastic reduction. We have to harmonize the recycling messages that each city has so that we are doing this consistently. We have to address organics and the management of those with our existing partners right now and the opportunities that exist. And we must start right away with construction and demolition debris and yard waste diversion. You will see in this presentation, this is the low-hanging fruit. It is highly divertible, and it is an extreme amount of the tonnage in our disposal process. And we have done a terrible job in Broward County. But the good news is there are strategies, there are ways to replicate this from other counties right here in the state of Florida. And in combination with our commitment of the cities and the county, we know we can do more to begin diverting. And I want to address an issue that's come up. And I will say what I said a year ago. There is no economic, environmental, social, or political appetite to expand waste-to-energy facilities here in Broward County to any new locations. Make no mistake, waste-to-energy is still part of how we manage about 700,000 tons of garbage each year here in Broward County, and almost every city does it. But as I said a year ago, and I'll say it again today, there is no part of this plan which calls for the expansion of waste-to-energy plants that do not exist, and we must move forward understanding that. At the same time, there are industry leaders that are already teaching us lessons about the strategic steps that we can take now and that we can replicate. We've heard from industry. For instance, North Broward Prep, a middle school, has its own, they compost everything. They recycle everything. And as a result, they've reduced their hauling charges and they're making money. The Florida Panthers, who are going to win the Stanley Cup tomorrow night. That's it? Come on. Have become an industry leader in the sports industry. See, they looked at everything that comes in the door and goes out. They control their supply chain, and they understood they needed to reduce their costs. At this point, they have reduced their hauling costs, they have increased their recycling, and they've made money off the process of source separation and doing the things we know we need to do. City Furniture, the cruise industry, others in our community are already beginning this process because it makes economic sense. Yes, it's good for the environment, but when business understands it can reduce costs and even make money at it, then we need to take action as well. We need to embrace these industry leaders and follow their examples. At the same time in this plan, you'll see that we are looking forward to emerging technologies, investing only in that which is proven. We know that technology will evolve, and as others have described us today, in 30 years, we're going to look like a bunch of monkeys with sticks in the stand trying to build skyscrapers. And we know that technology will evolve, but we cannot chase everything that seems possible or even not yet provable, but interesting. we have an obligation to protect the resources of the taxpayers with an eye towards that which is proven. And some will say, you know what, this is going to cost some money. Maybe what we should do is just fracture again and landfill everything. Maybe that's a choice. If you ignore the paramount environmental damage that we are doing, if you ignore the policy of diverting from landfills, and then, most dangerously, allow yourself to become subject to the market forces and even monopolistic pricing behavior. You see, you might get short-term benefits, but in the long run, as those market players are watching, when we have no other choices, when we cannot pivot to control our own destiny, the cost of transportation and disposal will go up, and we will lose our own destiny. When we have no plan, when we cede our leadership responsibilities to the market forces for short-term gains, they will come a-hunting eventually. And our legacy will only be matched by the decisions that were made 50 years ago. We have our co-chair here, Beam Firm from the County Commission, who's been an amazing partner and has been a leader in this area. And before I hand it over, I want to just end with this. Our focus must be on changing behavior by diverting with all available and viable strategies to reduce that residual that must go to landfilling or waste to energy to its absolute minimum. Reduce, reuse, recycle, to divert. And we must exert our joint and superior economic power by being galvanized as cities and residents and businesses in the county in a common purpose, a common vision, and a common mission. We have to act decisively and deliberately and with as much haste as is possible with government organizations to construct a plan for the next 50 years. What you'll see tonight is a roadmap. It's living, it's breathing, it's meant to adjust. There are some big picture issues that we must agree on first. Like, we must start, though, today, doing what we can now and avoiding the mistakes of the past and taking off the table that which is not palatable to our community. And for those opposed to WTE who are out here tonight and have raised their voices, I say to you, bring that energy to reduce, reuse, and recycle. It cannot be a one-horse pony on this. If you want to divert from WTE and landfilling, we have to do all the other issues, and we have to do it together. Thank you, and I want to hand it over now to Beam Firm from the County Commission. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everybody. First, I want to thank you all for being here. This is an extremely complex issue. And Mike and I have been working on this for over 10 years with a lot of other cities. I'm okay. I'm going to stay down there. I think. I've been working on it quite a while. I was on the Resource Recovery Board when I was a Hollywood City Commissioner. And I had a chance to see how that worked for many, many years. And I saw, for many years, I would go to national county conventions and stuff like that. They looked at our county as actually being one of the ones that they envied because we were able to take care of all of our garbage. At the time, we had 2 waste energy plants and a robust recycling program, a very good educational program, a research and development program. You had a lot of things that were working. It was disheartening, to say the least, when it broke up in 2012, 2013. Because you had the economies of scale of having all of the cities working together. You had flow control. We were actually able to look at, what were the possibilities and where we could go. The other day, Mike had mentioned that we have a garbage crisis. I actually want to reframe it a little bit. I look at it as an environmental crisis. Because actually our garbage is being taken care of. It has a place to go. I say that because coming from the county, the statutory responsibility for where your garbage goes is the county's responsibility. When I was a city commissioner, the only thing I had to worry about was, did it get picked up? Because that's the only thing that the residents would call me about. They didn't pick it up, come get it, come on. And I'd go, okay, all right, and we'd make sure it got picked up. As a county commissioner, I've had to concern myself with where it goes and what happens to it when it goes there. Along the way, and this has been, I think we've all seen the evolution of thought while we've been working on this. The whole concept of zero waste has taken a strong hold with the entire executive committee. I think we're seeing this plan is seen through that lens, and I think it's the right lens for that. But there was something else that also came along while that was then, and something that I hadn't, and I'm the chair of the Climate Change Task Force for Broward County. And I will tell you, that started in 2009, and for those that don't know, that's 4 counties that got together and put together a compact: Palm Beach, Broward County, Dade, and Monroe. They were looking at climate change, and they were looking at all the causes and how to mitigate it and how to do this and that. The one thing that wasn't part of their language and that wasn't part of the vocabulary was waste. It hadn't been brought up yet. And until recently, until you started to see the international papers on climate change by the United Nations and by the world scientists starting to look at what are the main causes of greenhouse gases, until you started to see that, until they started to bring that up, I wasn't connecting garbage and climate change in the way I am now. And I say that because there is not a perfect solution here. But I went to Dubai a year and a half ago to the Conference of Parties. And this is where all the nations in the world come together. And they look at what are the causes of climate change and what can we do about it. The third leading cause of greenhouse gases is landfills. So and when I was there, what you were seeing in exhibit after exhibit, scientists showing all kinds of things from slowing of the Atlantic current to the terrain that's up in the Arctic starting to, the permafrost melting, all those kind of things. And what that methane does to this planet. And what I didn't realize was that methane, which is emitted from the organics that are in landfills, traps heat is 80 times more effective at trapping heat than your normal carbon dioxide. That has made me take a second look at landfilling entirely. Even the best capturing of methane at any landfill you're at, and there's a lot of pretty good ones, there's still fugitive methane that is escaping. For us here, what I've seen with what that does and that trapping of heat, what I've seen is actually the destruction of habitats, one very close to us. And if you go over to the ocean and look at the coral reefs, the main reason that that's being destroyed is heat. And we are now looking at trying to do coral restoration by going down to Guatemala, where they have coral there that's living in hotter waters than ours. We're having to try to transplant coral up to here. So when we start thinking here of what our options are, we have to be putting that into consideration, because we've got options. None of them are particularly good. But I will tell you, the part when you start affecting the heat, and that's something that we all have to be thinking about. What you're looking at is this destruction of ecological habitats. And I think there's a lot of environmentalists in here. I don't think I'm mistaken on that. And we're all looking at things in in different ways, and we all have some agendas. But I do want us to put that at the forefront of your mind, because what you're seeing, particularly here in Florida, you saw what we had been doing over the last 15 years was transplanting all corals. All of them were killed and the heat 2 years ago. All of them. That's heat because of the greenhouse gases. Our plan does not take into consideration enough of getting rid of landfilling. And all the stuff that we're doing, that trying to divert it, all that's good. When we talked about a garbage crisis, for our own landfill, dealing with Monarch Hill, we just passed the expansion of that landfill. You would think that's contradictory to what I just talked about. But what we did was we have decided to take all the organics out of that landfill and compost them in another place so that we are not adding any methane to that. Now that's a very progressive idea. It is not going to be easy to do, but that is, I think, a very big part of this plan at some point. And I hope everybody can grasp that part of it. I want to thank SCS for working on this. This has been a yeoman's effort. And for those who have been following along, there are lots and lots of white papers and research and all those kind of, lot of things to read. And I hope you've had a chance to read it. But it is something that is incumbent upon us to get this right. And I think we're going to, with your help, we'll try to get it right. I think with all of us, I appreciate our chair's passion on this. We have a very good executive board, very good consultants, and with your all's help, we'll make a good decision and make the right decision not only for us, for our representatives, for our residents, but also for the globe and the planet. So thank you very much.
I do want to thank Beam, and I'll just give you a little bit of history before we go to this, because it's hard to overstate how hard it's been to get to this moment. When we broke up the cities and the county, there was tremendous distrust. And I called Beam and Mayor Sturmer from Weston, and the three of us sat down, having seen what was happening and how we were going in the wrong direction on every metric. And we came up with this audacious plan of trying to bring everyone back together, and it hasn't been easy. And to Beam Furr's credit, his credibility, making sure that we did not allow the politics of the personal or of the past to dominate, and the ability to have sharp and sometimes disagreeable conversations with an eye towards knowing there was a greater good, is a credit to those on the executive committee, on the governing board, to the cities that have participated, and even the cities who haven't participated, because they're watching what we're doing. This is our last best chance. So I hope as you watch this presentation and you develop your questions, we can talk about the big ideas and we can talk about the mechanics, but what we should never talk about is becoming fractured again. So I'll turn it over now to SCS for the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Thank you, Mayor Furr. Thank you to the members of the public that have joined us tonight and those who are watching at home. And I want to welcome you to the Draft Master Plan Outreach Workshop. And as was stated, it's the culmination of several years of work by the county and the members of the Solid Waste Authority of Broward County and the work of the SCS engineers team over the past year. Tonight we'll be presenting the highlights of the Draft Master Plan, and we are seeking your input before the master plan is finalized. And one way we can think about the master plan is it's really a strategic document that has distinct phases. We're still at the strategy phase, really in the nascent stages of development. And once finalized and adopted, we'll enter the tactical phase, really where the rubber meets the road. But as was shared by Mayor Ryan, there are still things, actions, activities that all of us can do, and the governments that support us can do in the meantime, because there is a lot of opportunity. So I encourage all of you to visit the Solid Waste Authority's website, where you can find the white papers and related resources that inform the development of the master plan. So let's review the agenda for today. First, we'll have some introductions and we'll set the stage. We will touch on where we've been, the issues and opportunities that face us, the work that we've completed, the recommended path forward, and finally a call to action. So let's start with setting the stage. Or better yet, let's start with some introductions. My name is Daniel Deitch. I'm with SES Engineers, and I'm the project manager for this exciting engagement. Tonight I'm joined by Travis Barnes. He is a senior consultant with one of our partner firms, Resource Recycling Systems. We also have the capable firm of Arcadis that has been part of our team, and Mercury that has been helping us with the public engagement and all the coordination for the event tonight. So we want to try to make it simple, but this is no simple matter. And really, the foundational question for us is, how do we transform from the current fragmented system to a unified authority? And as I mentioned, the master plan provides the strategic framework for the county and the municipalities within to work together to move the needle on resource management. You've heard the term already tonight. You're going to hear it many more times, and that is zero waste. We've applied a zero waste lens that focuses on reducing the amount of material that enters the waste stream and then finds a way to extract the maximum value before it requires ultimately disposal. I'm going to say this now, and it's going to be a recurring theme. In our lifetime, there will always be a need for a landfill. There are components in the waste stream that simply cannot be beneficially used at this time, which is part of the reason why such a large focus is on minimizing the amount of waste that enters the waste stream in the first place, and having the systems and the behavior change necessary to access those systems so that we're extracting the maximum value from the waste stream components. So as was mentioned, going back to data that is shared with the state and then reported back to us, in 2023, Broward County recycled about 39% of the total waste stream. We were challenged with the goal of how do we get to 75%? There's a lot of space in between. So we think about it in terms of, well, what are the principles that will guide us for this journey? One is behavior change. We all can do something in terms of better management of our waste, whether it's reducing the amount of waste that we generate in the first place, and once we have it, making sure that it's being managed properly so that we can access the systems that can extract the value from it. Economies of scale. One of the issues that was mentioned in Mayor Ryan's opening remarks is we have a fragmented system that limits our buying power, and there are inherent benefits of working together, and we'll touch on that during the presentation. It's important also that we harmonize services. So it doesn't matter whether you live in Lauderhill or you live in Fort Lauderdale, you understand what the system is and what is being asked of you so that there is consistency wherever you are in the county, and that messaging can also be extended to the visitors enjoying their time in Broward County. Resource stewardship is a core value, just as environmental stewardship are. We have a responsibility to the next generations to make sure that we are leaving Broward County and beyond in better shape than when we inherited it. And the last is financial stability. And we believe that financial stability really will come from the economies of scale and leveraging the resources, the facilities that already exist in Broward County. So that feeds into the pathways. How do we get to 75% recycling? We know that a robust education and outreach program is not just a nice to have, it is foundationally important. As I mentioned, using the zero waste lens, we have to minimize or maximize the waste minimization. We have to increase access to recycling. Not all cities within Broward County are offering recycling, and there are challenges for certain disadvantaged communities accessing those services. We know that there are opportunities to optimize organics management, and we view this as building blocks, starting with what's easy, which is yard trash, which represents a significant portion of our waste stream, and then building on that to focus on food waste. We know that there are opportunities to initiate a more robust construction and demolition debris management. Again, this is very heavy material, and there are incredible opportunities to process it and send it out to market. We also know that there's the role of each of our governments in terms of enacting policies and regulations, and the Solid Waste Authority is already leading in this regard. It was mentioned to keep our eye on innovative technologies. We have done a deep dive into where we are and where the industry is moving to, and that has informed our recommendations. Importantly, we know that there is a lot of existing infrastructure within Broward County, and there are opportunities to leverage that. And if the need exceeds what that availability is, there are opportunities to procure the new services or facilities. And lastly, there is absolutely a need to secure long-term disposal capacity. As Mayor Furr mentioned, the county has a statutory obligation to provide disposal capacity. The state does not say where that needs to be, but I think we can all agree that as Broward County has been built out, the likelihood of siting a new landfill for Class 1 waste, the kind of waste that we all generate every day, is next to zero. All of these elements together really speak to the opportunity for the Solid Waste Authority on behalf of the county to control your solid waste destiny. But we have to be focused not just on where we want to go to, but what we can do now, which is why the master plan is action-oriented. So I just want to take a stroll, not even a walk down memory lane. But in the 1970s, the Davie landfill was approaching capacity, and the leaders at that time knew that they had a responsibility. Thank you. They still had the responsibility to provide disposal capacity. It also coincided with the oil embargo and an energy crisis. And at that time, there was a recognition that waste to energy did provide a long-term volume reduction approach to managing waste. So in the early 1980s, the county started investigating the feasibility of that. They issued solicitations in the mid-1980s, and then that led to the formation of the Solid Waste District through the interlocal agreement. The facilities came online in 1991, and recognizing that a decision had to be made by the then ILA members that they had a decision to make. When the bonds retired after 20 years, a decision had to be made whether to continue with that body using the existing infrastructure. So in 2006, an event was convened, affectionately known as the Trash Summit, to bring elected officials within Broward County and beyond to discuss the benefits, some of the same issues that we're talking about today, the economies of scale utilizing the existing infrastructure. And without passing judgment, the decision was made to go it alone. So the ILA expired in 2013. Many years passed, and I think many elected officials in the communities that were once part of the ILA realized that maybe there's a better way to manage solid waste. Maybe working together really does have its benefits, and that is in part what led to the reestablishment of this authority and formed the Solid Waste Authority of Broward County. And we entered the picture shortly thereafter to leverage our understanding of the local conditions and our expertise in solid waste planning. So after more than a decade of fragmentation, the authority was reconstituted, and it does provide a much-needed regional governance framework. It allows for leveraging the economies of scale, coordinating investments, harmonizing policies, and speaking with a unified voice. So as you can see, there are different categories of communities: large members, medium members, small members, but by intention, Solid Waste Authority was designed to bring everybody to the table with fair and reasonable representation. So a lot of our interaction is with the executive committee, which is a subset of the governing board. Both the governing board and the executive committee have specific responsibilities as enumerated in the interlocal agreement. It led to the hiring of an executive director. There is counsel, and the goal is to carry forward this master plan into action. So as you can see in this slide, there is quite a bit of existing infrastructure within Broward County, mostly privately owned and operated. It's geographically diverse. It's spread across the county in terms of north to south and east to west. But critically important are the number of facilities that it can accept, and I'm going to use a technical term again, Class 1 waste. That's the kind of garbage that we generate at our homes and at work. There is no existing capacity to dispose of Class 1 waste in Broward County. There are facilities that can process it and then move it out of county. And what we have explored is maximizing the use of that existing infrastructure in the short term as the master plan plays out and evolves. So this slide simply shows the total amount of waste that is generated and managed in Broward County. So with a population of approximately 2 million residents, you have about 5 million tons of waste that is collected. Much of it, about 39%, is recycled. It's broken into two categories, both certified and non-certified. The numbers on the right-hand side add up to the 1.5 million tons that are recycled. That gets us to the 39% adjusted recycle rate. And about, as it's reported by the state, about 500,000 tons are combusted in the waste energy plant. It's actually what's represented as a net number. Mayor Ryan is correct. More than 700,000 tons of Broward County waste is currently managed at the resource recovery facility. And today, approximately 3 million tons is landfilled, much of it out of the county. So I want to touch on some issues and opportunities that are facing Broward County. As Mayor Furr indicated earlier, there is the statutory requirement to process or to provide disposal capacity for all the waste that's generated. We also have the opportunity to align the Solid Waste Authority of Broward County members to work together. We can move away from the fragmented approach and really leverage the opportunity that exists. As I mentioned, there's limited public land and a lot of concern about cost uncertainty. But we believe that through the tactics and strategy laid out in this master plan, that can be managed. There's also the challenge of vertical integration within the solid waste industry. We believe that this can be used to the authority's advantage. And as I mentioned, there's ample existing solid waste infrastructure that can be leveraged. And I'm going to touch on the waste composition that really highlights where what we consider low-hanging fruit and the opportunities are to increase the recycling rate. And lastly, and this was brought up at our last executive committee meeting, achieving 75% is not a light switch. It's not a silver bullet. It really is a journey, and it's a journey that we can all join together, and that's what we're advocating for. So as I mentioned, these are some pie charts from the waste composition study that was completed last year. And as you can see, while the number of recyclable material is in the 30% range, the compostable material that's in the waste stream today eclipses that, and we believe that that can be capitalized on, and the amount of waste that is potentially divertible. So on the residential side, nearly 79% is either recyclable, compostable, or potentially divertible, and on the commercial side, nearly 76% falls into the same categories, and that to us is real opportunity. C&D and bulk waste is another real opportunity. While the amount of it that is being recovered today is limited, nearly 80% of that waste stream is recyclable, compostable, or potentially divertible. But in all cases, there is some amount of waste that will still need to go to a landfill, and we have to be clear-eyed about that. So let me touch on work completed to date. And where we started with the executive committee was establishing guiding principles. And this essentially framed the analysis for us. It helped us understand what success would look like. These were shared in no particular order with the executive committee. The feedback from them was, with the exception of controlling your solid waste management destiny, which was identified as the top priority, these were all of essentially equal importance. And that is applying the zero waste focus, meeting other requirements for environmental and growth management compliance, providing for that long-term disposal solution, only recommending commercially proven technologies. And as my colleague will share, we looked at the entire universe of technologies on behalf of the authority, and we narrowed that list down to those that are ready for prime time today. Of course, from the customer side, operational excellence is an absolute requirement, and then harmonizing the services county-wide, and ultimately providing for best value service. There are also some key policies that helped provide direction to us. The first is a 40-year planning horizon. We have to look out over the horizon in a sense of where we are today to understand how growth is going to impact the amount of waste that's generated, and also where the opportunities may be on vacant land. We also looked for out-of-county disposal options as well as intra-governmental partnerships. We were challenged to maximize the use of existing infrastructure. We were looking at, and that's actually in part of the next phase, figuring out the best way to financially support the solid waste system. We were hyper-focused on reasonable buffers from residential properties, and we'll be touching on that in a bit. And we also looked at some mandatory approaches to better manage waste stream components. So, as I mentioned, all of the white papers are available on the county website. The Solid Waste Authority website. But just to highlight a few of them. One, we looked at the regulatory and policy framework, which essentially provides the context for how systems and services will be set out. The education and outreach, it is fundamentally important that we're able to communicate the how and why. We need a big tent with everybody participating. We, again, want to look out over the horizon where the innovative future technologies are looking promising and staying on top of that, and conducting the future needs assessment, understanding where we are today and exploring different scenarios for how we can meet the challenges that lay before us. So in terms of the regulatory and policy framework, for anybody in government, I'm sure you can appreciate that preemption remains a challenge for all of our local governments, but there are viable regulatory and policy options available to the authority and to each of your municipalities, whether it's disposal bans, mandates, partnerships when we get to that point in terms of services and facilities, inserting or negotiating performance incentives. Government has an opportunity to lead by example with their purchasing programs, and then also material bans on the front end. Next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Travis Barnes, who will walk through other parts of the analysis.
Come on, let's give him a round of applause. He did know that.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So my name is Travis Barnes. I'm a senior consultant with Resource Recycling Systems. Our company was brought on as a subcontractor to help the SCS team, and predominantly because we have a zero waste focus. Recycling.com is our company. We've been in the business about 40 years, hyper-focused on recycling, waste diversion, and maximizing how you keep waste out of the landfill. And so that's how we view our mission and approach to all of the jobs that we participate in. One of the first things that's really critical for the Solid Waste Authority to pursue and where you've got the most potential to gain quick wins is with education outreach. And it can't be overstated how essential it is for us to really start to work together to harmonize that messaging. And it also gets to the targeted list of recyclables, trying to make sure that over time, all of the communities can have a harmonized list so that residents understand what can and can't be recycled regardless of where they're at within the community. And also looking at some of the other services, in particular yard waste, and how that's set out at the curb so that we can really maximize the beneficial use of that material and get that out of the landfill as well. So in order for recycling to be successful, though, you really have to focus on that community-based social marketing. So our research has shown, and in the literature, that you have to have access to recycling in order to be able to participate. You have to have the knowledge to feel empowered, to know that you're making the right disposal decision and that you feel that you're making, you're doing the right thing by participating. And then you've got to have engagement to get people to actually take that step to change their behavior if it's not something that they're regularly doing now, or to increase that behavior so that they are maximizing their ability to participate in the program. And so you need all three legs of that, the access, the knowledge, and the engagement to really make education outreach work. And that comes with working across the different communities, but also with the variety of your stakeholders. It was mentioned that the Florida Panthers have a great recycling program. They can be one of the trusted voice in your community to show that it can be done within a business and it can be done economically as well. It was mentioned in the schools as well as another example. So really, whether you live, work, or play across Broward County, wherever you're at, you want to have an example of how you can participate, and it's something that everyone celebrates. It becomes part of your culture here in the community, and there's a lot of buy-in with that, and that's where you start to see the sustained success from the education and outreach. We also took a deep dive into all of the future technologies that are currently on the market, and this is not just something that we looked at in North America, but really across the globe with this. And the pace of technology is changing so rapidly. I know everyone's aware of that, and it's impacting most industries, particularly the garbage and waste industry. A lot of that is focused on customer engagement. So using that data that is being gathered from all of the different trucks that are in the field, whether it's staff that have tablets in the field, whether it's customers that are interfacing with your website or with a smart application, having all of that data coming in at real time and starting to aggregate it so that you can more quickly make decisions to improve that customer service, but also know if there are issues with your collection system as an example, or if there's issues at a particular facility. All of that is starting to coalesce into these portals and platforms that can really speak to each other, and that's something that we really discuss in the Task 9 white paper. But we also look at the different types of processing technologies, and we've really only focused in this plan on ones that are proven. They've been commercially viable in operation for at least a year and can handle that municipal solid waste material coming in. There's a variety of other processes that are starting to emerge that can look at maybe a single subset of the waste stream. Think just the plastics, for example, or just the fibers. But there are not that many that have been proven to be successful over the course of time that can deal with that garbage coming right off your truck and extract the maximum value out of that. And so we've really tried to focus only on those technologies that we know are proven and therefore are lower risk, and something that we feel confident that we could recommend that ratepayers and taxpayers can spend their money on. A part of this is to really look at over the planning horizon. We know technology will change, so it's important as the authority is forming basically from the ground up again to keep an eye on the changing technology and to really think what's the best practices that we can incorporate as we start to build those systems, whether it's the website, the customer engagement portals that we talk about, and other aspects of the system. And the key with that is that we know there's going to be changes, but you can only act on what is proven today. So this is a overly simplified view of kind of existing waste processing technologies. What's really important here to point out is at the very top is that waste reduction, right? The refuse and reuse component is most essential. Anything that we can do to keep waste from entering the waste management system at first is what's most impactful from a cost savings perspective as well as an environmental perspective. If we can get people to compost at home, and then that's food waste that's going to be beneficially used right there on their property. That's the best for the environment and the best for our ratepayers because it doesn't enter into our system that then we have to manage and take action to move it. Every time you touch that ton of garbage in any way, there's a cost associated with that. Once waste is generated and gets into the system and becomes kind of the authority or your municipality's responsibility to manage, there's still opportunities there that we can look to divert material out of the waste stream. So there's a lot of emphasis on reusing of materials, and you've seen some municipalities really stand up their drop-off sites to provide more opportunities to reuse. So think increasing the ability to donate materials that are still in good use to get those back into circulation. Swap shops, those types of things can be done. Once you get into actually having waste that has to be managed in some way, there are those conversion processes, and I'll touch on those briefly. And then there's always going to be the need for landfill, as Daniel mentioned. Unfortunately, that's the reality of recovery. There's going to be some residue left over after a lot of these processes, and there's going to be some material that is not ideal to go into the processes to begin with. And there's also that added resiliency factor. We're in a hurricane area. If you get a direct hit, just like our neighbors did over on the East Coast this past year, the volume of waste generated is such that you need that additional disposal capacity just to have that resiliency factor within your community. Within those conversion factors, you've got the biological. So those could be the composting that we mentioned, but can be done at larger industrial scale. You've also got anaerobic digestion, which is growing interest within the US and particularly in Florida. There's a new facility that's being permitted through the state right now. In recent conversations with the Department of Environmental Protection at the state level, they're excited to go through that regulatory permitting process to help them better understand how facilities can be built in Florida, because we know that there's interest from the private sector in doing that to really target the organic waste stream. You've got mechanical processes. Those are like your typical single stream recycling facilities right now, your MRFs, your material recovery facilities. When you put your recycling out at the curb, single stream altogether, they go to these facilities. They use a variety of technology, both people and equipment, to separate that out into the respective commodity groups, your streams of cardboard and used beverage containers and such. Your construction and demolition recycling that we keep talking about is one of the low-hanging fruits. Most of those facilities also use mechanical sortation to kind of get at those materials, liberate it from the waste stream, and get it back into beneficial use. And then you've got the thermal processes, which gets into those that are more kind of technologically advanced, that have the traditional mass burn waste to energy, as you're familiar with the Broward Resource Recovery Facility. And then you've also got some emerging technologies that are being used as well. One of the ones that we do recommend in the plan is in growing into use is the biochar for yard waste. That is something that we're recommending as an emerging tool for us to use. It creates a different type of product, so there's some diversity in how you can market your yard waste. Leon County in Florida is a great example of one that has piloted that technology, and as of next year, 2026, they're intending to use the majority of their yard waste to go to that process. So out of the planning process, the planning horizon was 40 years, but we looked at what types of facilities would need to be generated theoretically in the year 2025, given the volume of waste that would be generated based on the waste projections that Daniel showed earlier, and the composition of that waste. So based on the volume generated and what's in it, what would be the best way to achieve the 75% recycling goal that we were set out to achieve? And so you can see from the different scenarios, scenario A was what we selected as being the most practical and cost effective. It also gives us the most flexibility to adapt as things change over the course of time. However, with that, it still only gets us to 62%. Some of the things that were similarities across all of the scenarios was that investment in education and outreach. So when we modeled these percentages increase in recycling, all of them included robust education outreach because it's a minimum that we have to do. They also included additional recycling drop-off locations, 8 facilities in ZAC, to complement the 5 that are already in use within the county. And those offer opportunities to recycle harder to recycle items, household hazardous waste. There's also growing emphasis on collecting certain types of batteries that pose a increased fire risk and safety hazard to the solid waste system, not only for our collection drivers that are picking the stuff up in the trucks, but also the transfer stations and any facility really that manages garbage is at an increased risk of fire these days, and there's a lot of growing emphasis on that. This week actually is Solid Waste and Recycling Workers Appreciation Week. So we want to really make sure that we're making sure that our drivers can get back home to their families safe as well. And those drop-off sites offer a great opportunity for residents to really engage and recycle some of that more dangerous materials with that. All five scenarios also envision 3 transfer stations so that we have the ability to better manage the flow of waste and to cut down on the haul distance from those collection routes to a destination that can then be taken into where it can go to a processing or a recycling site with that. Scenario A does not include any new waste energy capacity. It does envision utilizing the existing facility that's in operation now, as did all the scenarios envision that as well. So looking at the types of facilities that were potentially going to be recommended, again, this was sort of an academic exercise looking at the volume of waste that was generated. So we're not saying that the authority needs to go out and build these facilities right now. As Daniel mentioned, there is quite a bit of existing private sector infrastructure that has capacity, and what would be most prudent and cost effective would be to use strategic procurements and partnerships to really get under contract and utilize that capacity right now at first. But over that planning horizon, given the volume of waste that will be generated, we do envision that there will be additional facilities that would be needed. And this was designed to show kind of the scope and scale of what those facilities could look like. You know, what would the minimum tonnage throughput be to make those viable? How many acres would be required? And those types of things. And with that, we did a robust siting exercise as well. So in the Task 6 white paper, you can go in and really look at all of the screening criteria that were utilized to determine, are there publicly owned sites available within the county that could be used to develop some of these technologies. And out of that, unfortunately, as we all know, the county is very built out. There are very few options under public ownership right now that could accommodate most of these facilities, which just speaks to the challenge that we have before us. I'll turn it back over to Daniel for the path forward. Premature clap, sorry.
It's his way of getting multiple claps.
Yeah, there we go. Fishing for the claps, there we go. All right, so some of the strategic priorities for advancing the master plan. We have to embrace that behavior change. So here's a quick little example. I came here last week for a different presentation. I stayed in a branded hotel, and they had no recycling, lots of single-use plastic at the breakfast in the morning, garbage everywhere. Everybody was having a good time with their own vacation, but just lots of waste being generated. I stayed at the same branded hotel. It's a different one, but same parent company this time. Robust recycling everywhere, had great signage, completely different experience, right? So it speaks to there's a lot of opportunity. That was just in one example, but that behavior change needs to become something that we all embrace in our daily lives. And in order to do that, we've got to start investing in education outreach and collaborating on that education outreach. Economies of scale was one of the other strategic priorities. So again, as all of our communities are different right now and doing different collections with their smaller amounts of tons, if we can aggregate those into contracts, it makes it more palatable for a processor of any type, big recycling facility, to want to invest in that. Those, if we can guarantee a certain amount of throughput, then they can do their pro forma to determine what that cost per ton will be and provide a longer term solution, 15, 20-year type contracts, or to do a public-private partnership with the authority potentially having ownership of that. All that would be dependent on a request for proposal process, but those economies of scale can't be understated that working together you can get to a better and more secure deal over time. The other is to leverage the existing infrastructure. Again, it's not that we need to flip a switch and we'll be at 75% and we'll have all of these new facilities. It really is going to be a methodical process where when you have a particular need, you go out and test the market to see if the existing private sector solutions that are there can meet your needs. And if not, that's when the authority can look to potentially fill the gap in some way with either a strategic procurement or with doing their own facility. And then harmonization of the services, that will lead to better acknowledgement and awareness amongst the public. So if you happen to move from one jurisdiction to the next, you know you're gonna have about the same level of services. If you work in one community and go to the park in the other one, or go to the beach and then you go back home, the same types of materials will be recycled. How you set yard waste out at the curb would be the same. Those types of things will lead to greater participation, less contamination, and better control over your system. So some of the specific recommendations that we have, Per policies and ordinances, we are going to recommend that we start to harmonize that level of service. So again, it's not saying that we're going to go out and change all of your collection contracts or anything of that level, but to state that there has to be some minimum level of service that all of the communities kind of abide by. And the way you would get to that at first would probably be to have some example contract language that could be used to either modify existing contracts, or when contracts come up for renewal to go back out to procure, they could have that standard set of kind of specifications that are utilized within that. Expanded single stream recycling is one of your best opportunities. It's approximately 20% of the community right now. Single family homes does not have access to that curbside recycling, so that's a great opportunity. Although there's also a lot of opportunity to look at the commercial sector as well as the multifamily apartment complexes and condos, a lot of missed recycling opportunities there. And so that speaks to establishing a mandatory commercial recycling ordinance. There are counties within the state that have done this for years, so there's recent models that we can get to with that. And also mandatory C&D recycling. That's another big one where there's a lot of tons at stake, and there's already ample infrastructure to be able to better recover those materials. Down the road, we envision exploring food waste recovery, and that's something that you've got to start kind of getting your feet wet with it. In scenario A, we envision certain types of drop-offs or special collections events with that. You can often partner with like community gardens at first, some of the school systems, existing smaller scale composting, to then build that critical mass to get into a larger type facility. Education and outreach, one of the key things here is that it can't be a one-off. Once we start down this path, you really have to invest in it and you have to stay invested in it. I come from local government in a larger municipality, another county right across the state. We were making great strides when we were investing in our recycling program. We're tied for the top recycling rate in the state at one point. When we stopped that due to budget cuts, our backsliding was very quick, very rapid, surprisingly so, because it was also a community that was rapidly growing, much like yourself. So it's one of those things where it can't be that you do it 1 year, every other year. You really have to invest in it and then maintain it, and then really look to where are you not meeting people so you can fill those gaps and look for continuous improvement with that. And then again, we want to partner with a wide variety of stakeholders, a lot of different voices to reach people where they're at. And there's a lot of good opportunities in our white papers where we talk about case studies of which communities are being successful with that. So for innovative technologies, we're really envisioning that there should be like a needs committee within the authority that looks at when you're going out to do your big contracts or you're going out to do a facility, what types of technologies are most appropriate at that point in time. Things are moving so quickly. We covered the state of things extremely well in Task 9 if you're interested. All different types of aspects of everything from collections to managing landfills to the best equipment that's going into recycling facilities to the use of AI, all of that's covered in there. But because of it moving so quickly and your needs will change over time, we think having a committee would be ideal to really look at, you've got a specific procurement that's coming up or a specific facility, what types of technologies best practice at that point in time to implement with that. But we've laid out a great foundation within the white papers. Organics management is another critical component because of the volume that's in the waste stream. The easiest thing to target at first would be your residential yard waste. Some communities are putting that out collected with bulk waste, and we can't really get at that easy to recover it. And there's ripe opportunities to utilize mulching operations to really keep that material out of the landfill and put it back into beneficial use. So that's one of the first things that you'd want to really target. Then you'd want to move into the food waste. There are communities that are really starting to look at food waste, and we can learn from them, but there's also kind of the yuck factor, the additional, dealing with that food waste, some concerns with, rodents and vectors and other things like that. And so we understand there's some trepidation with that, but there are communities that are excelling, and so we recommend starting slow and then building momentum over time with food waste. In scenario A in particular, some of the highlights are, again, restore that single stream recycling service to all of the single family households at a minimum. Start to segregate materials out of the curb, with yard waste being one of the key things that should be targeted early. Start to have additional drop-off locations to really target the hard-to-recycle items for the household hazardous waste, help reduce that fire threat that I mentioned to your system, both now and the future system, and those can serve as good hubs for your outreach as well. So when people are coming to your drop-off sites, they can often be used to leverage to engage with them, whether it be for additional surveys or distributing literature, talking to them to see what they're hearing, how do they find out a given program, those types of things within that. You've also got to continue to focus on your waste reduction policies, the education outreach like we talked about, really engage with diverse stakeholders. I can't say it enough. You know, anybody that's willing to be a partner with you that's going to get your messaging out there, it'd be critical to partner with them. Some of the additional facilities that were contemplated over the planning horizon were additional single-stream recycling facilities, organics processing sites, construction and demolition recycling facilities, the transfer stations, and again, you will need some additional landfill capacity over the planning horizon. Most likely that will not be able to be sited within the county, but you will need to secure capacity in the future. These are some of the capacities and capital expenses as well as your annual operating expense estimates. Key thing with this is that these do not include the cost of land acquisition, and we know that there are limited publicly available parcels right now, but this gives you kind of a scope and scale of the type of investment that would be needed at some point. Again, some of these services can be achieved through strategic partnerships where you're paying that tipping fee per ton on a tip fee, and it's not something where there would have to be as much capital expenditure up front. So there's a variety of ways to get at the same level of service, but this just is an example to show you kind of the scale of the investment that would be needed over the course of time. And here's our other call to action.
All right, yeah, we'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Travis. So as I mentioned, this is the call to action. What is on the screen now is a implementation plan and timeline. We know this is going to change, but what it hopefully conveys to you is that this is a process, right? We are on this journey to 75%, but that journey begins with accepting the master plan, taking care of the opportunities for policy development and implementation, the communication, deployment of the communication plan that is based on best practices for education and outreach programs, managing the C&D, aligning policies. While we were not tasked with focusing on collection, we are hyper-focused on how material is set out at the curb. And we know that in the future, there is an opportunity to align all of the collection agreements so that they are in good alignment with the master plan and all of the infrastructure that is being leveraged. There's a lot of activities that could have been identified in this as we sort of digest the feedback from the various public workshops. The implementation plan and timeline will be revised. So in terms of next steps, there are immediate activities that we're focused on. This is this is now the third public workshop. There's one more public workshop at this phase of the project that will be hosted in Fort Lauderdale tomorrow night. We will be revising and issuing the master plan based on public input. This is one of the commitments that we made and the authority made at the beginning of this process, that it would be inclusive, it would be participatory, and we know that we need to build the largest tent possible to effectuate the kind of change that is necessary to achieve 75%. This includes engaging both ILA and non-ILA members. You heard Mayor Ryan say at the beginning that this engagement is every bit for the non-ILA members as it is for the ILA members, right? Because there are benefits in us all working together. Once the master plan is adopted, it will transition from strategy to tactics. What the authority is doing already, and we encourage doing more of this, is establishing subcommittees, so subject-specific subcommittees of the governing board, so that the various ideas can be fleshed out. We can get that input from the municipal level. These meetings are all open to the public. Anybody is able to join and offer your thoughts, and we believe that that's a critical success factor. In terms of legislation and policies, as we've talked about, C&D management, yard trash are two waste streams where there's great opportunity. Flow control and harmonizing material management we see as two important success factors in terms of securing a more financially secure future for the authority. That is the sustainable financial plan that will be developed in the next phase of this project. Then, of course, deploying the communication plan, And as we gain flow control or have control over the waste stream from the ILA members, then we can prepare solicitations, requests for proposals, requests for information for recyclable material management, yard trash management, C&D management, and ultimately solid waste disposal. And it's going to be important every day to keep looking out over the horizon for what is promising. I can share with you that the use, integration, and adoption of AI is happening at a very fast clip. What is possible today, nobody knew was possible years ago, and it's only accelerating. So in that same vein, we also want to assess what the infrastructure needs will be in the future so that we don't arrive at that point and face another crisis. We want to plan proactively, and that is, so I believe, the sentiment that Mayor Ryan was trying to express with, it's a dynamic document. It doesn't just sit on a shelf. It really is the guidebook. Okay, so here is your call to action, and it's important because every day we generate more waste, and every day that we delay is a lost opportunity. There's no need to stand still. We can walk forward together and solve these challenges working together. So we ask that you discuss the draft master plan with your family, with your friends, and with your neighbors, and provide your feedback on the draft master plan. Just as you've taken the time out of your personal lives to attend this workshop, I encourage you to attend your city and county commission meetings and support moving the draft master plan forward. And let's get it passed to secure a better future for all of our children and the next generation and the next generation. So we invite the community to stand with us and establish a long-term sustainable solid waste system for all of the Broward County communities. And if the master plan is approved, please don't take your foot off the gas. Be ready to support its implementation. Again, it's by having the largest tent possible that we can move the needle and achieve our goals.
Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. We'll open up for public comment, but before I do want to take a moment to recognize the variety of cities that are here. Mayor Messam from Miramar's here. Please stand if you're representing a city. Representatives from Plantation, Southwest Ranches, the county. I say that because there are almost every city in the county is participating. By participating doesn't mean just going to meetings. They financially have supported this process. And to Mayor Bright Cruz, who's here, a member of the executive committee, I want to give him a round of applause. If there are other members of the executive committee, please stand. And to the point about committees, the executive committee has already begun the process of constructing an education and outreach committee and a C&D and yard waste committee. We are taking action now. We are beginning that process of working with other cities in the county. Importantly, the school board is also at the table. Often people say, why isn't the school board? The school board is participating. They're not only a large producer, they have access to those that will lecture all of the adults at home, right? Just like we want to turn off the showers for the teenagers, right? They will lecture us about what we're doing. And finally, I want to thank the county. As part of this process, they've begun analyzing how we can do better with glass, C&D, and yard waste, and working together, we can begin to tackle these. All right, if you're here for a public comment, please raise your hand. And then please, if you can queue up, just so we can kind of move through this. You can start here. Give us your name and the city you're from. Mayor Ford, come on up so that you can help participate and answer some questions. Each speaker has 2 minutes, and we will begin with our first speaker. Go ahead and give us your name and the city you're
from Pembroke Pines, Florida. My comments go with basically what you sort of outlined here to a certain degree. What I think you're doing is you're thinking too small. You need to think more like South Florida Water Management District level. You need this to be a multi-county authority. You talked about the economies of scale. You get that when it's 6 counties, 8 counties involved. You worry about, do we have land to put this on? Again, you suddenly have 6 or 8 counties. You got a much bigger area to work with, as well as those districts, of course, have taxing authority they've got money to maybe build facilities that you talked about, so that the district owns them, the people own them. So that's my idea. I actually wrote to my county commissioner. Unfortunately, I never heard anything back, so I doubt this will go anywhere. It wasn't you, don't worry.
Well, to that point, let me just say, we are looking at that, and Mayor Furr and the executive committee has been looking at a regional approach, engaging our regional partners. I will say it's been a yeoman's work just to keep the cities together, but what you say is absolutely true. And I think Mayor Furr will be able to talk about this after the comments. This is certainly a tri-county, if not broader, effort, so I agree with you 100%.
And through the South Florida Regional Planning Council, that has been discussed. Miami-Dade actually passed a resolution to help regionalize with us, so there are lots of discussions going on that way.
Well, I would think you would need Collier, Lee, Hendry, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Monroe. I mean, make it big. Don't go small.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you.
So we can keep it together. Well done. Thank you. Sir, give us your name. Nice to see you again.
Noah Hollingsworth, Southwest Ranches. When I spoke to Beam Firm many years ago, he scared the daylights out of me by saying that we were going to need 4 incinerators. Yeah, you did, outside Southwest Ranches Town Hall to me. But in the 4 corners of the town, and it scared me. And I've worked ever since trying to develop within our town, recycle, reuse, and replace. And it worked pretty good. And we have started a new organics just in Southwest Ranches in the last month. And the town's paying for it. We recycled before, several years after everyone went their own way, we were recycling at 70%. But then our waste hauler was bought out by a larger company, and we have fallen to 40%, just like the rest of the county. So I know it can be done, and it's fairly painless if you want to do it correctly. But education is the main thing, and we have to educate, educate, educate. What I do have a problem with is the incinerator, and it's been touched on tonight, but it's in every last one of the scenarios. And it's not saying just one. It says basically as needed. So that could be more than one. And I do not desire to see any more than the one old wheelabrator site that has to be. And hopefully, as we progress with this recycle, reuse, et cetera, we can get rid of that incinerator also. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you
Hi.
again. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the millions at home.
Dr. Julie Long, City of Plantation. First, I want to thank the Southwest Authority for the work you're doing. I've been to enough meetings now to know how dedicated people are, how intelligent, and how you really are listening to the public. And I believe that our comments have made a difference, and I'd love to see the evolution of your thinking. My main concern is health. Everybody's concerned about it, but it's hard to draw the direct link from our trash to our health. I've seen children die of heat stroke. I've seen them die of asthma. I've seen increased congenital anomalies in the 30 years I practiced in Broward County. In my mind, that's all linked to our trash and our environment. In order for our children to be healthy, we need our planet and our local communities to be healthy. It comes at a cost. And the cost is not borne equally by all members of our society, as we well know. Landfills, incinerators, they're cited in different communities. I think one thing that I haven't heard so much talk about, I realize if I was an elected official, I wouldn't be saying this either. I think this may cost more than people are paying, and I think besides the massive education effort, I think that there needs to be consequences for antisocial behavior. I consider littering, clogging up our storm drains and everything, antisocial behavior. I think it's revenue left on the table for municipalities to enforce litter bans and basically change people's behavior. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Good evening, folks. My name is Bob Hartman. I'm the Vice Mayor of Southwest Ranches. There's 3 points I want to hit on, and I think Newell picked up on one of them already. We do not need incinerators in the future. You really need to put into the master plan a goal. Most plans have goals in them. Set a goal for 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, to decommission the Wheeler-Brader plant. We don't need it. The technology is evolving, but without a goal, there's nothing to shoot for. And what worries me is future county commissions, future solid waste authority boards are going to keep hearing how the technology has improved on incinerators and not as bad as they used to be. I'll never believe that. That's item number one. Item number two, in your plan, there's 2 biochar technologies. Biochar is charcoal. You get to charcoal by burning things, burning all of this yard waste, whether it's tree limbs, whether it's wood chips, anything that's coming out of the back, basically, of my yard or a landscaper's truck. All those things can also be composted. They don't have to be burned. The problem with biochar, the outcome is good. I mean, we have charcoal that we can use for soil amendments. Lots of different products can be created from the charcoal. However, we're still creating greenhouse gases with that. So that shouldn't be in the plan at all, because to me, that's counterproductive for the direction we want to go. The third thing is education. Can't say it enough, that needs to be your highest priority. Every sports team has got a mascot. We need one, okay? It needs to be at every sporting event. Dolphins game, if there's ever another Super Bowl here, we need whatever our mascot is in a communications plan, because as exciting as county commission meetings are, they're during the day when most people work, and frankly, I don't know too many people other than people that are involved in my town that go to them. So you really need to get out the word every possible way, hire as many PR firms as it takes, because all this other money we're planning on spending won't make a difference if people don't comply. Thank you.
Thank you. For the education, just so you know, I don't know, Vice Mayor, if you do TikTok, but we are already using Young Ambassadors, this new platform that apparently people can dance on and stuff. Yeah. We already have, cities have begun using ambassadors to deliver the message in very powerful ways using different platforms. So it is an effort that's already begun. Ma'am?
Town of Weddington, Cooper City, great bags. I went to New Jersey. New Jersey no longer uses plastic bags. That's my pet peeve. There shouldn't be a plastic bag blowing on the street. And I would think that New Jersey did it from the state level down, because you
Right.
have to have one of these.
I'll help you right here. The state has prohibited us from banning plastic bags.
Well, then we have to work to,
Amen.
because if New Jersey could do it, I don't see why Florida
Well, I'll tell you what
can't.
happened was there was a proposal to do it. The legislation was authored that required the Florida Department of Environmental Protection to do a study first to see whether or not what we were saying was true. Of course, it came back saying, yes, we should divert these, we should stop these. But because that report's never been adopted by the legislature, cities are preempted from doing anything. It doesn't mean you can't do something and your neighbors can't do anything. And I have a ton of those, not those particular green bags. I have so many reusable bags in my trunk because as a Catholic altar boy, I feel guilty and I end up buying more and more. So there's things that we can do when we forget, but it takes a community. So thank you.
And I think we have to storm Tallahassee.
Don't use the word
Stop the
storm. Don't use the
plastic.
word storm anymore. All right, thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Alexandra Martinez from Southwest Ranches, and the opening remarks and presentation I feel are on point, except here's where I have an issue, and here's my feedback. We cannot leave the door open for new WT incinerators to be implemented. There is mention that it'll be next to zero, but we need to make it zero. The current plan is leaving the back door open for it, and it's shown in slides 23, where we have the different scenarios. They're listed on B and C. That's leaving the door open. It also, on slide 24, when we talk about the siting, half a mile for a potential WT incinerator from a home, that's not being hyper-focused on buffers to residential areas, and for mulching and other forms to be less than half a mile of a home it stinks. And I'm all for it, but we need bigger buffers from homes. So also another way of leaving the back door open is Appendix B, starting on page 490, where we say that, incinerators maybe aren't so bad, instead of stating the documented dangers. If not, go to Doral, take a look at the signs around. So this is unacceptable. Please hear out. We urge you to completely remove WTE incineration from the plan as a possibility. We need to take them out from all the scenarios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
My name is Margarita Lartitegui from Weston, 19 years living in the city. I'm here today because a city commissioner invited me. He's part of the executive board or executive group, and I just wanted to reinforce the power of outreach and education. I heard that you're going to be working with the Broward County schools. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Weston. It's a very active, very involved in the city, and I'm the environmental chair for that team. So we do everything. Beach cleanups, we talk about plastic pollution, we do recycling, we do electronic elections. And what we have seen is a community that reacts in an amazing way with a little bit of information out there, and people react. So my message to you is use, and I've used the grassroots organizations like Rotary or any other in the community. There are plenty, because with little bit of information, they will assist you reaching that household that you desperately need.
Absolutely.
Because not all the households have a kid in the school system. And what we have seen with other projects is that sometimes it comes from the upper level, from Broward County, which is good, and we need the support. But sometimes what really works is a project that comes in an enticing way for the students. So just use us.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point you raised. I think one thing government does well is tell you how you should learn. What we don't do well is learn how you actually do learn, right? And so it's not just organizations like the Rotary Club in Weston, it's a faith-based community that has the capacity to communicate and to deliver a message that you'll actually listen to, right? You'll listen to your rabbi, you'll listen to your priest, right, your imam, you'll listen. And so it is part of the overall outreach to touch every community. I thank you for what Rotary does out there. Say hi to Michael Friedland for me. Ma'am?
Good evening, and thank you again for all that you're doing. I realize you're working very hard on this, and I want you to work harder. One of the things that I've done, I don't know if you have, I've talked to, I'm sure, over 100 people in Broward County, and they don't know what the Solid Waste Authority is. They don't know that you're thinking or talking possibly of doing incineration or burning. They also don't even know what waste to energy means. As a matter of fact, if I ask them, what do you think of waste to energy? They think, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. They don't know it's an incinerator. They don't know it's burning. So I feel in our plan, every place where we mention it, every place, waste to energy, it should be also mentioned that that's incineration. People don't know that, and it's being sneaked in. I don't think we should build any more incinerators. None have been built for a very long time in the United States, and the ones that have been built are giving off dangerous emissions, and I could go on for a long time as to why I don't want incinerators. It's many reasons. One of your biggest problems out where I live in West Broward is we're right next to the Everglades, and they're doing Everglades restoration, and they're right there on the boundary lines where Miami-Dade wants to build and Broward. So I don't think that's really ever even going to happen. But someone I know in Dade, they got the same situation really going on, said to me the other day, this is sort of an important person, almost a politician, involved with a lot of things. And he said to me, one of our commissioners in Miami was suggesting that we want to have zero waste. Well, that's ridiculous. I don't agree with that. We're never going to have zero waste. So what that simply amounted to, and I explained to them what was meant by zero waste, and then they understood. But people don't even understand what zero waste means. It sounds impossible. The definition on the EPA website.
Your time's up, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay,
I know
you.
you had an opportunity
Thank
at the
you.
last meeting. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you.
We'll see you throughout this process. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and thank you, Harold Gubnitsky, Southwest Ranches. So thank you all for what you're doing. I know it's a yeoman's job, and the only way we're going to accomplish any of these goals is if we're all together, so we just got to continue to emphasize that. The education, as chair of the Zero Waste in Southwest Advisory Board in Southwest Ranches, it is the education. So if we can do this as a county, get the economies of scale, get the dollars and messaging out at the county level, it's going to help us all have a consistent, solid message there. The other thing I'd like to say is, and I'm sure you're thinking about this, if not, I'll put this in your head, what kind of incentives can we do, carrots or sticks, for those cities that do the right thing, that have the right behaviors? And I think that's going to help drive the actions that we want to have. And then I guess the last thing I'll mention, and as part of my education in my own city, I need to help educate. There are ways of doing things like composting and biochar, good ways and bad ways. If you do them properly, they don't actually have emissions. And so I'll ask our consultants to help cite some papers on that. I have some experience in some of those areas as well. I'm happy to help out in any way. But in biochar, it's not a burn, it's a bake. And if you do it right, you can eliminate emissions and actually lock in CO2 for hundreds of years, as you guys know that. So thank you again, and you have our support.
Thank you for your service to our community. Appreciate that.
When Broward, doing the RRB, when Broward actually had a 60% recycling rate, it was educating all through the schools and everything, and it did dedicate a ton of money, and it makes all the difference in the world. You're right.
Debbie, nice to see you again.
Thank you. Okay, Davie Green, Southwest Ranches. I appreciate all the hard work
Have
you
you
put
missed?
in.
Have
I've
you missed a
invested
single
myself.
meeting yet?
I think I missed 2.
Okay, all right.
I was there twice a month with y'all. So, but I just wanted to say, again, starting from the first public outreach meeting last year that was put on by the Broward Solid Waste Authority's Master Plan Consultants, you have heard consistently and definitively that the residents of Broward County do not want any new incineration. While I do understand there is a very small percentage of our solid waste that has no other safe way to being disposed of, the existing waste-to-energy site should be sufficient. If we move forward with the recommended plan by the consultants using the other more sustainable processes to divert a substantial amount of solid waste from landfill, incineration waste to energy. And now we'll add energy recovery, as some of that verbiage is now showing up in the master plan. I urge you to amend the language in section 15.2.1.6 that reads that the scenario A, that's the recommended by the consultants, assumes, it's assuming that there's no permitted disposal capacity at the solid Broward RRF will continue to be used. A new waste-to-energy facility is not contemplated at this time. I urge you, we need to remove that at this time. It's no new waste-to-energy site, period. As included in the draft master plan, let's separate out yard debris from bulk pickups. By making this one simple change, we've already diverted a substantial amount of solid waste from the landfill and our incineration waste to energy. Second, requiring all to recycle will divert another substantial amount from landfill and incineration. One of the largest things required to implement the recommended scenario is education. That's all said. Let's give the residents of Broward County more credit and believe that most are willing to make the changes in behavior and habits to do the right thing for our environment and health. Let's leave our counties, cities, and towns more sustainable, economically stronger, and healthier with a true circular economy of trash for our next generation than we found it. To share what co-chair Mike Ryan has said several times at the executive committee meetings, in addition to the constant suggestion that the county pick up the bill, is to remove incineration waste to energy from the plan. If so, all the cities will agree. And by keeping all this authority, but has to succeed for all of this to move forward.
Okay,
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mike Spitzer, Southwest Ranches. I've written to you gentlemen a couple of papers you may recall. My background, I was an environmental chemist. I once owned one of the largest environmental testing labs in the state of Florida, SCS, Arcadius, Wheelbrader. Most of the towns in Broward County and Palm Beach and Miami were my clients at one time. So I'm familiar with the sort of wastes and stuff that are emitted. I actually was going to make just one comment this evening and raise 2 questions. But after hearing some of the people talk about waste energy, I'm going to make 2 comments and 2 questions. One, every time I have a chance to grab a microphone, there's a statistic I like to state to the audience, because usually this is a statistic when it comes to greenhouse gases, to pollution, to environmental climate change that most people never gets talked about, but it's actually the #1 cause, despite the fact that no one likes to talk about it, and that is human population growth. The only reason I like to throw this out, it gives people something to think about. I always hear all, the gasp in the audience when I throw out the statistic. Every week, we add 1.5 million new people to the planet. Every week. So next time you guys have a meeting a week from now, we'll have 3 million more people. And you get the idea. So we talk about the amount of pollution being produced, the amount of waste being produced. That is always going to be a factor that drives those numbers forever, regardless of what kind of plan or technology we use. Now, going to what I was saying, when we come to waste to energy, some people like to look at Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark is a good example with their Copenhagen. I just want to use that as a lesson and a warning sign because that did not live up to the promises it had. It now has had to start moving away from municipal waste, taking in waste from other countries to feed the beast. And even though, even with that in place, they're now talking about reducing their incineration and knocking out 70% of their incineration in the next couple of years to reduce capacity. And I didn't get to my 2 questions, unfortunately, for you.
It's all right. You can submit them, though, all right? We're taking comments online, so please submit them. The executive committee will consider them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Damian Reynolds from Pembroke Pines. From one of the cities that's currently not recycling. So it pains me. I really think the draft master plan is on the right track in terms of the broad outlines of what it's saying. My concern, or I have a couple of concerns, but I think my foremost concern is that we might not be being ambitious enough. And I don't know the politics of everything that's involved, and maybe it's like herding cats in all these cities. Maybe the county's doesn't have the political will to do what's necessary to do more. But I think when I look at my fellow Broward citizens, that there is definitely an appetite to do more and to do more quicker. And if it's up to the people, if the right plan is communicated to folks, they are more than willing to do what's necessary to make it happen, including spending the money for it. So that's kind of the most important thing. I really appreciate being respectful and being practical, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I do think there's an appetite to do more. So that's the biggest thing for me. The second thing, I don't want to be a broken record, but obviously, I think I don't need to even say this. We don't want any more incinerators in Broward County. I just wanted to add my 2 cents on that. So if we can tailor it so that the incinerators stay to what it is now and we can phase it out, I really think that's a right step forward, especially with getting the public on board. And thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Yes. My name is Derek Tay. I'm from the city of Sunrise. I very much appreciate what you all are doing, and like everyone here knows, this is a very urgent problem, and we really need to do something about this issue. I just had a couple comments that came to mind in the middle of this meeting. First of all, my first comment is, so I live in a condo, and while I personally would be like very willing to try all sorts of stuff, like, I would try, I would be willing to try, doing worm composting
right,
at home. But then, I don't live alone. I live with my parents, and they definitely don't want to have anything to do with it. But they're willing to take things to a drop-off point, take recyclables to a drop-off point, take, if we were doing organics recycling, they're willing to take it to a drop-off point. And so I just wanted to stress, if you make it convenient, people will be much more willing to do it. So it's like, if my mom knew there were a place where she could drop this stuff off, she would do it. But you have her do it at home, and so that's like the participation, how you step up participation. The other thing I wanted to mention is, so one of the slides mentioned the use of new technologies. I noticed the mention of AI and blockchain. I do want to caution about how certain technologies, especially these two, especially blockchain, are they're very energy hungry, and so that's going to be that's another consideration, like with regards to its environmental impact, its climate change impact. So we want to be very careful with the use of those sorts of technologies. Thank you.
Excellent. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming out.
Hi, my name is Jamie Friend. I'm from Hollywood, and I want to say thank you so much for your commitment and your passion, and we really appreciate that. I have 2 recommendations, and I'll end with a question. I think you need a committee on how to speed up the timeline.
In everything in government, if you can solve that for me, and doing this now in 15 years, the idea that government moves this way, this is not counting against your time. When Beam and Dan Sturmer and I sat down and we said, look, we could own our own recycling center and we could do this. We don't have to make a profit on it. In the time it took us to keep the cities together, to even get to this point with sharp elbows and arguments and splits on the horizon, Waste Management built a $90 million recycling plant. So I agree. That did not count against your time. Please start her over.
A committee on how to wait.
You need more than a committee. Okay. You need something.
Also, I saw a mention of commercial incentives, and I didn't say anything about residential incentives. I don't share my community's confidence in people to just voluntarily change their behavior, but they will do it for money. If I recall, we had a recycling program years and years ago, but you had to go online, and it involved maybe like 5% off at a fast food chain or something. Cash works. I also agree with the woman who said that we should have consequences for not adhering to these policies. And I'll end with the question of preemption, the state preemption on mandates and bans. So if you can address that.
Yeah. So the state, not only in the area of garbage, but in many areas of home rule, continues to displace the decisions that we'd like to make as a community. Even if 100% of us, and just pick Hollywood, 100% of voters, all residents, all businesses said we want to ban plastic bags, you can't do it. However, cities are doing what they can in their own operations. And so we will start where we can in our own operations and what we expect in single-use plastics. Until you're elected governor or there's a change, this preemption is going to be an issue. We know it. We have to work around it. We can't ignore it. Thank you. I want to thank everybody for their comments, and I'll turn it over to the chair for a second. But I do want to hope you took away from this that in order for us to make up for the failures of the past 50 years, we have to stay together. We might have some disagreements. I know you want at this time removed out. It gets removed, it doesn't guarantee, because here's the deal. If you don't bring the same level of energy to banning waste to energy, to halting that, to what every other strategy is, we're going to be left no choice. The next generation is going to be left no choice. We need to act and do what we can now with the same energy and not just come out for that one issue. I am grateful to the executive committee and the work that's being done aggressively, and we want to move even faster. And so you'll start seeing ideas for cities and the county to work together on diverting construction and demolition, yard waste, and beginning those processes even before the master plan is finalized, because that's the action we need to take now. I want to turn it over to my co-chair for closing comments.
Sure, thank you. From the county's point of view, the one thing that I think we have to consider is it's hard to take anything off the table. It really is, because we've seen what happened in Miami when they suddenly lost their capacity. When their waste energy plant went down, they faced an entire building moratorium, because if you can't handle your garbage, you are not allowed by state policy. You're not allowed to build a house. Total moratorium. So consequently, what Miami's doing is having to train all of their garbage about 150 miles north, and that's what happens when something gets taken off the table. So from the county, we have to, I think we're on the right track, and I think what Mike is saying, we have to challenge ourselves to try to do every zero waste possible and see what we can do. See if we can really change behavior so that you don't need some of the other technologies. We have to see if that's to be seen. But I think having you all here makes a big difference. I love to see what Southwest Ranches has done. You guys, when you pulled yourselves together, you were able to do that kind of recycling. You made a huge difference. And I think you're a good example for the rest of the county to show everybody, look, you can do this. But if you don't do this, here's the other stuff that happens. So, I appreciate what you've done, and I think the entire executive committee has appreciated all of the feedback from everybody. So thank you very much.
I want to thank everyone who came here this evening, those that have submitted comments, those that will continue to participate. This is a living, breathing document. It is a journey together. And please carry home the energy that you have tonight for the issues, and I hope you learned a little bit about it. Garbage is not considered to be sexy, but I think what you've seen from this is when you see a trash can, it is actually an accumulation of commodities that we have to get control of. So thank you for your participation, and I look forward to the next steps. Thank you.